Good morning. This is Dale Fye. I'm the host of the AccessUserGroups.org Eastern Time Zone Users Group. Thank you all for joining us this morning. I'm going to turn over the controls to Crystal Long, who is a longtime Access MVP and developer, trainer. Crystal, I'd like to pass things over to you. Change your role to presenter. You have the controls.
Good morning. Thank you, Dale. It's nice to be here and share with other Access users and developers. I've been using Microsoft Office since 1992 and especially love Access. I also do a lot with Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. My business is connecting to other developers who are building applications. You have the business knowledge, and I have skills to automate. Together, we build an application that's better than either of us could do alone. Teamwork is great. I'm happy to be here with you today and share my CalendarMaker. It's posted on MS Access Gurus, where you'll find tools, code, videos, articles, and contributions from others. Today, I'll be showing you my CalendarMaker. It doesn't do everything that I want yet, but what Access application has really ever done. I'll show you what it does now. Here's the web page where you can go get this tool. So when you go to this page, just a real quick way to the download is just to click download right here. Then here's the CalendarMaker database. I just updated it last night. I didn't get everything in there that I wanted to, but there's still a lot of good stuff there. I just didn't get the custom pictures working. I will, if y'all just want to go get that. That way you can open it up while we're talking. You don't have to, of course. I put my screen in a bigger resolution so that it's easier to see everything. But when you first open the CalendarMaker, you'll see a menu, and it will automatically read your Windows region settings. And so you will see if you're in another country or English isn't your installed language, you're going to see these day names for your language. So this calendar, you can pick whichever day you want the week to start with. If you just do open calendar with nothing else, all it does is go out and it's drawing this with a report. And these will be in your language. So mine is English, and I have the first day set to Monday, so the weeks are starting on Monday. You can change it, though, for whatever first day of the week you want. And now it's Thursday, so I'll just close that. I actually developed this tool because of somebody in France. Jose wrote to me and wanted to be able to change the first day of the week. So here you are, Jose. Although I didn't tell him about this meeting, he'll probably catch it on the rerun. But I'll put it back to Sunday. There's a number of things we can show on this calendar. For instance, I could add a title to the calendar. I'll change this in a minute. Just whatever your title is, it puts it after the month name here. So I'll close that. If I want to show holidays on the calendar, I did take the time to put holidays in for a couple years for various different countries, and so I'll pick the holidays for the United States. This is the United Kingdom, Norway, Mexico, France, and Canadian English. So if I choose to show that for holidays, then when I open the calendar, the days are labeled, and there's also, and I'll show you this query in a minute. The trick to it is just to get the fields that it's looking for in the query. There's a field called is bold, and it's true for New Year's Day, and it's not true for Orthodox Christmas Day, so that's why it's gray. We can also show more information on this calendar. For instance, I've got several just sample data sets in here. One of them is birthdays from my contact management system. So if I open the calendar, this is all sample data. But here it's just saying the people who have birthdays and when their birthdays are. And probably if I do that, I want to change the title to birthdays. And now if I open the calendar, I'll see birthdays on the top. I'm going to switch back to my web page for a minute just to show you what the queries need. For the holiday and the data queries, Access, what it's doing is it's looking for holiday in the name of the query, and if it's there, it's going to show it to you on the list. And for the other one, I need to change that. It doesn't look for data in the name, it looks for calendar in the name. I need to fix my web page. It's looking for a field called Cal Year, which is the 4-digit year you can use, Cal Month and Cal Day, and I did have it using a date. But I was working on this when one of the little buggies was rolled out and it wasn't taking my date criteria. So I separated the fields into year, month, and day, and that worked. So I decided, even though I think the bug is fixed now, I just leave it that way. Text 1 is the name of the field that has the actual data you want to show on the days. For instance, the birthday, the name of the person who's having a birthday. Now the holiday query and the calendar query, once again I need to change this, have all the same fields except the calendar query doesn't pay any attention to ISBOLD. You can put extra fields in the query, it'll just ignore them, but it has to be in the holiday query. So these fields have to be in the holiday query. And then you can just make it for any data that you have in your database. I'll show you a couple of these queries. So if I come down here, just going to filter this for calendar. I got to spell it right. QCal. All of these will show up. The one I just showed you was the birthdays. It's just using those fields that are on the website that it's expecting. Text 1 is what's going to be in the cell. Cal year, cal month, calendar day. And then, like magic, they show up. I was so happy to get this to work. You can put all kinds of information in here. I mean, obviously appointments, some of the other sample data I have is for orders, payments, production, sales, although I think I have to change this to be October 2019 since that's where the data is. And if I open the calendar now, I'll just change this title to orders. So if I open the calendar, here are orders, and what it's doing here is it's looping. So these are actually different records for different orders. So it loops. It separates everything with a comma and a space, all the different records. However, sometimes you might want to change that code. You might want to use a carriage return line feed to concatenate stuff if you want them to be stacked. If you're not going to have more than about 5 or 6 or 7 lines, I can't remember how many actually show up here. But right now there's nothing to stop this text from just going wild and encroaching into the cell below it. Let's see if I can find one with longer data.
Hey, Crystal, just a point that you might want to consider. You made the comment you could change the code, but you could just as easily add a text box on your form here with a default text delimiter.
Oh yeah, good idea.
That way you could do it on the fly rather than having to hard code that.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Dale. I'm gonna go look at the Spurs games. Is Mary connected yet? Mary, are you out there?
I do not see a Mary logged in.
Okay, let me go look at this Spurs query. You can also change the year and the month. You don't have to set it there. You can choose year and month numbers as well as just changing the start date in the month. Now if I open the calendars, these are the Spurs games. Oh, and since I'm doing Spurs, this is a friend of mine in the UK. Some of you know him, Adrian Bell. This is like his favorite team. So I put the Spurs schedule in here, and I'll go get the holidays for the UK and the Spurs games. There's my title. I open this up, and now I can see the Spurs games. And since this game has already happened, it's showing they didn't win. They lost 0-2 to Southampton. And let me just maximize this. Their most recent game was against Liverpool, and they didn't win that one either. But hopefully, the game on the 18th against Watford, they'll win. And I think I've got this time in wrong. It's probably supposed to be 19:30. Adrian can tell me if that's actually correct, if it's 7:30 in the morning. No, not the San Antonio Spurs. Although, you can put any schedules in here you want. Actually, in this tool, I put, if you filter for GAM, you'll see there's several tables for gaming, and there's also a form, this one for a main form, and then it's got subforms. There's sports. I got all kinds of sports in here. I actually spent like a few days getting all these different sports in here. There is a hierarchy in here. Whenever I make a table, if there's an ID field, I always use ID in my field name for an auto number. If I have that same primary key name and an underscore, like this column, that's my little notation that is the parent ID. So I did fill it out for some of these. For instance, I also put the games in for the NFL playoffs. NFL is 1198 as the sport ID, and then the American Football Conference is a different record, but its parent is the NFL. That's how I do this. These are actually the only two records right now that are using that hierarchy, but of course they all can, and then on your queries you just have to duplicate that table for however many levels you want it to be able to drill into. If I want to output this to a PDF file, then I can just click on Output to PDF, and then when I open the calendar, what it's doing is it's actually just going out there and making a PDF file. Here it is. So this is a PDF file. You can see the name starts with calendar, and then there's the title I gave it, Spurs. That's what's in this title box right here. 2020-01 is just the first month of 2020, and day 2 means that the week starts with day 2, which is Monday. And this creates a folder called Calendars underneath the database directory, and there's nothing in there right now to browse to put it somewhere else, hoping to do that at some point. However, I haven't done it yet. But you can easily go into the code and change the default directory where those calendars go. I always like to go around the room and have everybody say hello and just something quick about themselves. So I'd like to just open this up right now. I see some familiar names on the participant list. Thank you. And Ben, I see you figured out how to change your name. You should tell Dale how to do that, because I don't think you had an S on there before. Why don't each of you jump in and just say a quick hello and what your interest is in making calendars with Access.
Hello, my name's Ben Satridge from Pittsburgh. I did figure out how to change my name. I had to go on my Windows Start menu and search for WebEx, and then I opened the WebEx program that must be installed on my computer, and there I was able to change my name. I'm not able to change my photo, my profile image. I probably have to be a WebEx customer to do that from what I looked up, so I'll just be BS. Leave it at that. As far as calendars, I use calendars in a way for one of my projects, and the question I was going to ask you is, we don't do a calendar per page. We do a calendar until it fits the page, because inside each day in the calendar, we have a subform, a subreport that outputs each individual record. So it might be a task that has to be done that day and who owns that task, and maybe a status or something like that. So we'll have repeating. So it's more like a week view that you might see in Outlook, and I was just wondering if you've developed something like that for this calendar.
I haven't yet, although one thing I've done here is this calendar can scale and it can be positioned. So if I choose like 12 months and open the calendar, oh, it's making a PDF. It's going to take it a minute. It scales the text and now not too well. So if you're going to print like a lot of calendars on a page, you might want to show short data. I still have to work on that scaling a little bit. You can print multiple calendars per page. And then when you do that, it labels it up here with the first month, the last month, and again, I'm using day 2 for the first day of the week. And but I know you're talking about a week-to-week thing. I'll just show you real quick another tool I have. Let me go to the top of this, go to Tools. I'll just open this in a new tab, and I'll go down to my HTML calendar report. This calendar report creates a web page and actually has a little more power than the calendar report I'm showing you right now, because this one has more fields you can put on it. You can color code your different information, and it grows to fit your text. Because it's an HTML report, it's not got a particular height. It'll just grow. So if you put a lot of data in there, these things are going to get really tall. Ben, did you want to say anything else?
I don't have anything else to add at this time.
Thank you for speaking up, and thank you for figuring out how to change the name. I'm sure Dale's really interested in that.
Now that I've heard that, yeah, I'll go out and look for that myself. This is Dale. In addition to being the host, the thing that got me on this one was I have a client who generates a year-long calendar for all of their employees, and they do it every month. And what they do is they track the hours worked on every day and any penalties they've assessed or positive points they've awarded for either tardiness, absenteeism, or actual positive points like 30 consecutive work days that they've actually worked without an absentee or whatever. And the report that they've got that does this is just really ugly. It's probably somewhere between 500 and 1,000 lines long, and I've been looking for a way to simplify that. And when I saw this, when Crystal mentioned this to me, I was like, oh, maybe I can, use this. And the power of this is that you don't have to use this form to generate the calendars. You can use a command line and pass the information to a subroutine or a procedure that she has, which is what happens when you click Open Calendar. So I don't even need to present this form to the users. I could just call her code and have it generate those calendars. And because the text on any given day is relatively short, probably no more than 10 characters total, this would be a perfect solution for that really ugly report that they generate.
Oh, thank you. I hope that works out. Daniel, you want to say something?
I don't think Daniel's got a audio connection.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, you can call in and talk, Daniel. I know a lot of presenters like to just present, not hear from other people while they're presenting, but I'm like the opposite. I want to hear from everybody. I want to get your ideas as well. Who else has a microphone? George, you want to say hello?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm working off of the microphone on my laptop, so I wasn't sure if it was going to pick me up. At the moment, I really don't have a need for a calendar, except I just need to mark the Wednesdays when my Social Security check gets deposited. Although I do have, as I'm looking at this, I'm starting to think of a potential use, which I won't go into detail with because it involves family, but I'm thinking there's a place where I could possibly take advantage of this. So I'll be looking into it more.
Nice that you're here, George. Thanks. All the things that start with C_ are from my contact management system. So I have, for instance, a thing in here for appointments, and I showed you the birthdays. But anyway, these tables are in here, George, if you want to use them, or just create them yourself.
Yeah. The use for which I would have it is like I say, it involves family. I won't go into detail, but I would have to create my own specific table for that purpose.
Okay, well, thank you for saying hello. Jim Detman, I see you're online. You want to say hello? This drop down here gets its list from a report table. So all of the calendar tables start with CAL. So there is a table over here for reports, and this has the report name. And there are other reports that I just haven't hooked up yet, and that's why not all of them are active. I don't think I've tested any of the ones with pictures. I am building a picture manager, and I actually did get that done where it'll go out and read all your picture file names from a directory, but I just didn't hook those up to the report yet because there's a way that you can do a calendar with a picture on the top, half-page picture on the top. Actually, that one might work. Let's see, custom picture. Let's see, open the calendar. I gotta uncheck that output to PDF. Okay, so this one actually does go get a picture. It's not a custom picture though. I think this is kind of hard-coded in picture. But you can use this to print calendars in all kinds of different ways. Like this one has just 3 calendars for the quarter and then a picture. And this could be, it doesn't have to actually be, picture. It could be text. So it could be like maybe your company objectives that you want to accomplish for this quarter if you're doing a company calendar or something like that. I'm going to uncheck this output to PDF now so it quits doing that. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but I've also been changing the number of months that it's going to print. So what it does is it loops and creates all the pages that you want for however many calendars you're doing, and then depending on how many calendars are on each page, hopefully this is working right, but I appreciate all your comments. If you get this and have suggestions for me, I just love to hear them, negative and positive. I just want to hear everything that everybody has to say. So now let's go take a look at the reports and see how they're done. So here's the default one. It's a calendar, and that's why I made this uppercase. So if I just go into the design view of this report, there's no boxes there, there's no lines there. Everything is done with code. So if I take a look at the code behind this report, I see that what it's doing is it's dimensioning X and Y, and I just like to use X and Y when I'm doing graphs because it just makes sense to me. And dx and dy are the difference in x and the difference in y, generally the width for dx and the height for dy. And I go out to me and I set the scale mode to 1, which is TWIPS, which is the default unless you've changed it to something else. And then the scale left and scale top, they would both be 0 in this case, but I go ahead and read them anyway because it could be something different. And then how wide is it and how tall is it, and then simply send it to the CalendarMaker. Send your report object, where to start, how wide you want it, and how tall you want it. So in this case, for each page, it's just calling this CalendarMaker. Now how is it changing that date? If I go back to here and I go to the design view and see what's happening when we open this calendar, it calls something called open the report, and that is just listed right below it. And it basically sets a bunch of variables ahead of time, and it gets some information out of the report ID combo box, and I've listed the column numbers and what kind of information they have. And then before it opens this, and it just makes sure that, do you have a holiday query? Do you have a data query? Do you have a title? How many rows and columns do you want on the report? And then it calls this set up calendar, and it's sending it the date to start with, the first day of the week, the number of months you want on the report, your title, if you have a holiday query or a calendar query, and the number of rows and columns. So if I go to the setup calendar, then I see what it's doing here is it's just setting a bunch of module level variables, and it does set some database properties too. But for the most part, it's using these module level variables, and mdate is the date that the calendar is going to print for. When it first gets set up, you just send it the first month. And then the CalendarMaker, I'll just go to the bottom of the CalendarMaker routine. When it's done, it just automatically adds 1 month to that date. And because some of the queries the birthday query doesn't actually have a year in it, but it needs to have the calendar year. So it's just going and getting the year for whatever the date is, because of course everybody has a celebration anniversary of their birthday every year. I guess technically they don't have a birthday every year. They only have one of those, but we call it birthday anyway. So it's going and getting this year, and because there are queries that are going to use this information here. But basically this code then is looping, and there's a print text wrap, which, let me go to the definition of that. Here we go. This is what is putting the text and wrapping it in the cells. So you send it the text you want. Again, you send it the X and Y of the upper top left where you want to start, the maximum width and the maximum height. And I did have this working before where it actually was chopping the height so it wouldn't go too far into the cell below, but something stopped working there. I'm thinking I maybe just didn't send the right numbers here. It's getting the text height of just an X, so it's using that to determine the height of the line, and it's setting some other things here. I'm actually using an array to split the text at each space, and then just printing however many words will fit on that line in that boundary before it needs to go down to the next line, because there's no control, no nice little control with boundaries. Okay, why do I use code behind the reports? Well, you have to set up something behind the report so that you can send it the X, Y, width, and height. So there has to be something there, although those could be set up somewhere else. The report itself wouldn't have to do it, but something has to do it. Something has to set those variables. It'd be great if I didn't have to use the predefined reports, but I didn't get as far into it to actually manipulate the report objects, because I'm also thinking of, I guess this is an ACCDB, so it could actually just go out and create whatever report you want. I just kind of did it the easy way for now, and then maybe I'll get smarter and find a better way.
Crystal, my point on that was, even if you only had one basic report, but you had your code in the same code module where all this other stuff is, then you wouldn't have to have half a dozen different, or I think you've got several different basic reports. You've got the 3 month and the 1 month and then the landscape versus portrait. I think if you had the code, your standard code module, instead, you could take that one standard report and then you could change its layout from portrait to landscape based on that field you've got in your table already. You could widen or narrow the title that's in that report and those kinds of things. And then you could also have all of that code that's behind there in that separate code module, so you wouldn't have to have each of these separate examples, is what my thought was.
You're right. There are several different reports. Thanks, Dale. Great comments. Calendars can be anywhere on a page and be any size. The CalendarMaker needs a report object, XY for the upper left coordinate, and width and height of the calendar to draw. The reports do different things. The default calendar is one calendar per page on landscape pages. And the code to call the CalendarMaker is easy. This is a good one to start with for learning how it works. The code is more complex behind the reports that show multiple calendars per page in rows and columns. So maybe somebody wouldn't want to see that code as the first thing. I think that might originally be why I separated them, but then I just thought it's kind of nice for other people to say, oh, that's kind of like the layout that I want. I'll just use that report and change it. So that was kind of my thought behind keeping it that way. Thanks, though, for bringing that up. That's a good point. You asked, why am I using code to wrap text? This is what the design view of these reports looks like. There aren't any controls. It's all done with VBA, so there isn't a control. So that's why I had to write my own little wrapper. I'm really impressed with what you can do with reports. I mean, obviously, there's a whole lot more than most of us do, and most of us don't get into the graphics like this. But I like graphics, and I like images. I like drawing. So this has been really fun for me to work on. For those of you that are joining now and didn't actually get the link to go get this tool yet, if you go to AccessUserGroups.org, then if you click on Tools, it says CalendarMaker is coming soon, and that's because it's actually out there already. I just really haven't wanted to make it public yet because I'm still modifying it. But if you click on this, it will take you to this CalendarMaker page, and you can download it and share it with other people. I've got these PDFs set up. You know, I changed my Windows region settings. I made calendars for different countries. Like if I go to France and I click here are the calendars in French for the year 2020 for the whole year. So here's January, February, just the whole year, and it's got the holidays. I don't have very many holidays in for French, but as you can see, it's getting the French names for the days of the week and for the month. So it basically just uses whatever language you have set up in Windows for the language for the calendar.
Crystal, can you go back and look at the code? Show us the code that's running that actually draws the calendars. I think that's the concept of there not being any controls in the form, I think has some of us it's baffled. Given that you could use, you could create text boxes on your calendar and use that, but I think instead you're using, like you said, print and probably draw or some other method. So I'd like to see what that looks like.
Okay, yeah. So here there's a module called CalendarMaker, and I put it all in uppercase so it would be easy to see. And then in there is a sub called CalendarMaker. So we're sending it the report object where it starts, the coordinates for the upper left here, how wide and how tall it is. You can change the color of the title. I just have it defaulting to this color, and then I think somewhere I tell you what that color is. Yeah, right here I tell you the RGB values of that. You can change the color of the data, and then you can send a true or false, whether or not you want the day numbers to be big. It calls print text wrap. It's also calling another routine to get the pixels per inch, and I needed to do this to be able to scale it so that it works for different monitors. And then here we're explaining what each of the module level variables is and what it needs. Hopefully I put in enough comments for you. Here's just some constants for different colors so I can use color names in the code instead of the RGB or these values. Dimensioning, record set, and database. And here we're just dimensioning other variables, lots of variables. I've got an array for X and Y. So how it knows where to go is it knows that day number 1, it knows what X and Y are for day number 1, and then Y2, if there is a day name or a holiday name or something like that, then AY2 is going to be what would be below that. And that's just so if the holiday name is long, then it won't start printing the actual contents of what you want in the cell on top of that. Setting the font size, again, here it's scaling it. So it's taking the width of the report, and I'm just dividing it by 500, which when the width is 14,400, which I think is 10 inches, then the size is going to be about 28 points. Setting the font size here, just setting more variables. It's going to keep track of the number of rows that month needs, because some months only use 4 rows to make the month, and some months use up to 6. It just depends on the particular month, what its first day is. So what's your first day of the week is, but it can go up to 6 rows. So this is how I'm figuring out how tall these rows are. Now we're figuring out, because we've got to draw a grid, so we're saying X2, which is where the lines are going to end, is going to be whatever the past X is, where we're starting, plus whatever the past width is. Past meaning PASSED, what we sent it as a parameter. I generally start my parameters for procedures with a little p, so I know when I'm looking at the code that that was something that I passed it. I know some of you, we all have our own little notation so that we can remember what we're doing. And now for the day number font, if we're doing bigger, then it'll just put it as the same font size as the title. Otherwise, it'll go 0.7 times the font size for the title. Now we come into the report properties. So this is the past report object. We're going to set the drawing width to be I draw with, and I might have actually set that to 2. I don't remember now. And then now what we do is go through a few things. We're going to put the month, year, and title in the middle at the top. So what I do is I use a variable called sText, and that's just whatever it is that I want to put there. And this is how it's getting the different text for depending on where you are, because it's just using the format function. And this is the full month name and the 4-digit year. And then we're setting the font size, the font name. It's not going to be italics. It is going to be bold. And I generally set these whether this one needs it or not, because something else might have set them before, because this report object keeps track of, this is a property of the report object. So as this changes, then it'll just stay that way until it changes to something else. And now to get it in the middle, I'm just going to take the width divided by 2 and add it to wherever the start is. Go through, in this case I'm doing a shadow, so I'm going to change the foreground color to like a gray, and I'm going to offset the X and offset the Y just a little bit. Then I'm going to print the text. Now I'm going to set the foreground color to what I want it to be and set X and Y to that, and then print the text. It's kind of cool how this works. They get layered. So as you are printing things on the report, they're just layered. So I had to do the gray boxes. Let me just go look at one of these reports. See these gray boxes here? I had to do the gray first and then write the numbers, because everything just covers everything else. So whatever you write just covers up what's there already. Now I just basically continue with this method. Set the foreground color, set current X. Now the current X and current Y, this is the coordinates that the report object is going to use to write something. So then my next thing is going to be this print method, and I'm just going to print that string of text here. And just change the foreground color, go to the next text thing. So all of that up there is just the titles and the stuff below. Now to make the grid, the Y position for the grid, where it starts, is going to be the top, and then plus whatever the text height is for, I just use an X here, and I multiplied it by 1.1, but that is so this grid, oh, that's the wrong screen. That is so this grid here, you see how it starts below the title? Because obviously I've got a title, so, well, not necessarily, but if I do have a title, then I need to know how tall it is. So the grid can start below there. And now it's using line. Now you'll see up here, I was able to put print in a with block. You can't do that with line. You actually have to preport.line. You have to have your report object.line or your code won't compile and it won't run. You can't put it in a with block. And I think the reason is because of this weird way they did the parameters here, the coordinates, where you have parentheses around the first coordinate and then you have a dash and you have parentheses around the second coordinate. And then you can send it a color. You can actually send line, I think a couple more parameters. But basically, I used print, I used line, and then to make boxes, and I used text width and text height to calculate the sizes of things. And then to make boxes, what you can do is you use the line, only you put another parameter on the end, BF, that means box and filled. So instead of doing a diagonal line, because I'm giving it the upper left and the lower right coordinates, but instead of doing a diagonal line, it'll do a box. B means box instead of just a diagonal line. And then F means it's going to be filled in with whatever color is specified. Oh, let me show you something on this page. Yeah. On my CalendarMaker page, let me go to the top. Oh, where's reference? Oh, I didn't put reference up. Oh, I didn't put it on my index. Let me find reference. Okay, so I've got a reference section, which I need to put on the index, but here I have a lot of help links for the report. Here's report line, report print, and some of these other report methods that I used. So you can just go look at the help. And the problem also with report line is because you can't use it in a with block, it also doesn't have IntelliSense. So as you're constructing this, you kind of have to know what the parameters are. So it is really helpful to just open up this help page and look and see what the syntax is that it's expecting. Okay, so can you see line in the object browser? You might be able to see it there, but again, there's no IntelliSense for it. So, and the same thing is true with circle. Although I didn't use circle on this, I have used circle for other things, but it doesn't have IntelliSense either. And I think it's and you also can't put it in a with block. You have to actually preface it with the report object. Now, let me find line better. I'll go to report and find it quicker this way. So, yeah, the object browser also tells you the syntax. I just like to keep a page open to the help. And I did that for quite a long time while I was writing these. And I also wrote some helper functions that will work with IntelliSense. Okay, overlap. Oh, yeah, and on the overlapping, in order to get it to not actually go over, I did make like a little inside boundary on those boxes so it doesn't actually go straight to the edges. So the gray, there actually is like a little sliver of white all the way around that gray box on the gray days where they're in the last days of the previous month or the first days of the next month. If you increase this, you'll see, I think I increased it a little too much. You'll see that, I think I'm almost out of time. Anyway, there is like a little white around it. Let me just wrap up, go back to the menu here, and just kind of close with showing you this form again and pointing out, see if I missed anything. Oh, I did miss something. So if you choose custom rows and columns, that turns these things on. So if you wanted like 4 rows and 5 columns, and let's say we want 16, let's see, 4 times 5 is 20. So, well, if we only do 16, it's only going to put 16 of them on. So if I open the calendar here, see, I've only got 16, even though I could fit 20 because I said I only wanted 16 months. But here you've got the ability to change the number of rows and columns you need. And yeah, Dwayne, I really appreciate your comments when I first put it out there, and that's kind of what caused me to do some of the things I did with the changes now. Although I haven't really updated the web page for the new version, and I need to because there's some things that are different. For instance, the calendar data query now needs calendar in the name instead of data in the name. But this hopefully will give you the flexibility you need. And like Dale said, you can just call this. You don't have to use this menu. You can just call the CalendarMaker. You can pattern after what I've done. Everything is open, so you can see it all. And I hope that you like this as much as I do. And I want to thank you for inviting me to present, Dale. And I'm going to close for now. If anybody wants to say anything, just turn your mic on and talk. Well, thank you, Daniel.
I'm really impressed with what you've done here. I know how hard it is to work with coordinates and get things to scale properly. So I think it's really cool.
Well, thanks, Ben.
Yeah, I appreciate it a lot, Crystal. I enjoyed playing with it a little bit when I downloaded it about 3 or 4 weeks ago when we talked initially, and I really do see a great opportunity to use this in other applications where the user wants to print a calendar with information on it. I commented, and I think Daniel had referred to, we could build a calendar report that has, as I mentioned in my discussion the other day about calendar form, we could build a calendar with 42 separate sub-reports and then filter each of those sub-reports for that day, et cetera. But this technique is pretty slick, this gives you the ability to do not just 1 month, but you can do multiple months. And I've got a client that this will work perfect for.
Well, great. And, somebody asked about weeks, and, obviously the code is all there. You can modify it. You can change it so it's doing weeks and not a month. And I tried to put comments in there so that other people could see what's going on better with the code, but I did spend a lot of time on that code. So, it's going to take a bit of time to understand it as well.
And I thank everybody for coming today and look forward to seeing you next month. Have a great day. Giorgio, you showed up. I unmuted it for him, but he may not. But he may not be on a one that's got one. That's great. I'm glad he was able to join us. Anyway, thanks. I appreciate it, Crystal, and I really look forward to playing around with this thing.
Thank you very much, Dale.